Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Strange Planet. And in today's episode, we're going to briefly talk a little bit about the writer's strike and what's been going on. And while this is not necessarily uncommon, this time it's more based upon this AI technology that seems ever growing. And from some of the information I've collected on this, it seems that a lot of these producing companies want to hire, I guess, the actors to come in to get like a scan of their face. So basically it'd be like a one-time payment. They'd come in to do this, but then they would have the freedom, I guess, to use that however and whenever they want. And it would also result in not having to pay the actual talent again. So I can understand why they're pissed and why they're doing this. It makes 100% sense. And I stand with them on that because this isn't right. And later in this episode, we will also be discussing more about the OpenAI, a lot of its functions, especially in the art and media world, and now the fact that it can actually kind of learn from a specific musician or artist or even author and then make output based on that information. We will have an example of this later on in this episode. And also, speaking of OpenAI, Sarah Silverman actually has a lawsuit with the OpenAI, and I believe it had something to do with them kind of illegally downloading her book. And Mark, I believe you had something you wanted to say about this.
Basically is saying is that OpenAI and Meta, the companies that make ChatGPT and all those AI kind of things, are illegally using copyrighted material to kind of train their database. So when the database makes anything that you ask it to do, it draws off of these materials. And so with copyright infringement laws, it kind of makes it a little messy and murky to go through. So that's what they're suing based on, is that they're illegally using the materials and it needs to be deleted or reprogrammed. I don't know what their standards are or what their demands are at the end of it all, but that's basically where we're at with that now. So they're suing those two companies in a dual lawsuit in, I think, U.S. District Court. And so copyright infringement, that's what the base is on.
Interesting. It makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you think about it, if you use these materials, you're using, like, say, for instance, it's Mark Twain you're thinking off of. Anything that has Chat GPT, so anything it would spit out to you about a story about a little girl in the middle of Wyoming, it'll have the kind of a Mark Twain feel. So it's drawing from all these materials, and it's basically making this work based on these people, and they're not seeing any revenue from it if it goes public or makes any money itself. So then you're getting into those kind of laws, and I know that I'm sure Rook knows the law end of it all.
Yeah, so she's bringing a lawsuit. It's actually a class action suit against OpenAI. I believe with maybe another couple of writers or two. I'm sure that there will be more members joining the class as the suit continues. But this, commenced late last year, I think in December, and it's still under litigation at the early stages. So basically, what she alleges is that OpenAI basically collected all of this information, and OpenAI doesn't deny this. They basically cast a wide net to collect data across the internet. And one of the things that they apparently collected, according to the lawsuit, was one of Sarah Silverman's books. And this book of hers was obtained not even from, a legitimate website. It was actually obtained from a pirate website that, illegally had her book for download. And so when they collected this data, the mere fact of copying that book into, and downloading it, that violates copyright law, the right of reproduction. And so that data was part of, an amalgamation of a large mass of data that went into training ChatGPT. And I guess when you query ChatGPT for Sarah Silverman's book, it will, reply with knowledge of it gained from, in part, ingesting that illegally infringing information. So, yeah, there's a real question as to whether, obviously, it's clear that OpenAI should not have downloaded an illegal copy of her book if that's, in fact, what they did. But the question is then, what liability do they have for, having data and deriving things from that data and then not really attributing or paying for the use of that data? Because even if it wasn't from an illegal pirate website, you still download that content and copy it, and you're making copies of it, and then you're making use of it. Now there's a tough question here, because if you look at, just compare it to, say, you're training, like, say, art, for instance, right? An artist can go study at a school and learn from a master artist. And this artist has a lot of skill, and the student will imitate the artist and try to draw just like the artist and learn everything that they know. They'll basically copy the artist. And in a sense, one could argue that that's essentially what these computers are doing, these AI programs are doing. They're gathering data in their own way, and they're just better at retaining that data because they know exactly what to remember. It's not like a human memory, which is kind of faulty. It knows everything. But then when you're asking ChatGPT for answers, it's not just relying purely on that data. It doesn't go search through all that data, because that data takes up a huge amount of memory that can't fit on, most computers, and it would just be too much to search through. But what generative AI and large language models have accomplished is they take all that information and they figure out basically a formula, a master formula, basically, that says if you put in whatever words, whatever information into this formula that's been baked from all this information, it's just in the form of a formula, a million parameter formula, mind you. It's a long, equation, basically. But you put in these inputs and you get out outputs that are predictive of what would be expected according to all of these sources. So what is the expected answer according to all of these sources of information? And they distill that information into a formula. And so that's what generative AI is in terms of large language models like ChatGPT. It's the same thing with like generative art like Midjourney or DALL-E. You're taking, if you ask for a picture of something with words and text, like that is put into a formula that was derived from studying thousands or millions of pictures. And then it amalgamates that into what would be the outcome of this according to those words. And it actually, well, this might be getting too technical, but it actually like starts with like a blank image, like something that looks like static. And it fills in those blanks as it goes on, and just keeps going over and over and fills in those little staticky blanks with the pixels that match up with what is described by the picture, since it is a formula derived from seeing all of that data. So in summary, like, this lawsuit by Sarah Silverman raises huge issues about, what precedents we want to set with regards to creative works. And I think, the outcome of this lawsuit is going to have huge implications for creators.
I agree with you there.
Well, I hear you there too. But here's my question now: if this happened to her with just her book, what's to say this isn't going to happen to a dozen more or hundreds of more authors out there? Because now I can see what the problem is, though, because they have this work that they put out up for sale. You know what I mean? And now this AI kind of just stole the whole thing. And now anybody that, say, taps into that, they probably could have access to the whole book to the point where it could probably read it to them, couldn't they?
Sure, but I mean, the problem is that I can go read J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter novels, right? And let's say I commit them to memory, word for word, and I know her style. Just because humans can't really do that unless they have like, photographic memory or something. Just because humans can't do that, like computers, have like perfect memories. And so they're able to spit back out word for word what you put into it. Says our minds don't really, our law hasn't like captured the fact that our minds actually create copies, quote unquote, of works in our heads. And the standard for copyright law is something, in order to be copyrighted, has to be fixed in a tangible medium. And
tangible
right
form.
now, right. And right now, our brains aren't considered a tangible medium in which a work can be fixed. It's ephemeral. And so I think that the brains of computers are just, way more reliable in terms of reproducing information than a human brain is. And we haven't grappled with that fact yet. That's
true too.
Yeah, the downside to it all is there is a downside. You can't dismiss that at all. I mean, yeah, it's great that these open AIs, these artificial intelligences can draw from many sources and not necessarily draw from all the information itself. Like you said, it breaks the books down into a formula. It says, okay, that's the Mark Twain formula, that's the Anne Rice formula, that's the Stephen King formula, that's the Edgar Allan Poe formula. It'll draw from all of that, and humans can't do that. I agree with you. So that's the upside. The downside is if someone's trying to make it in this field, that can essentially take their job from them.
Exactly.
And in a way that, like, I bet you can go to Chat GPT now and say, write me a story in the style of Harry Potter. Actually, you know what? Write me the next story that J.K. Rowling would have written, Harry Potter after Hogwarts, and see what the Chat GPT does. If it actually would make that story like 400 something pages long in the style of J.K. Rowling, that's where that line starts to get into a dangerous area.
I hear you.
You can start printing books that say, oh, hey, this is a new book by Terry Goodkind. And, oh, hey, this is the new book by Edgar Allan Poe, secret book that no one ever knew he had. And his grandmother left with fucking family members 16,000 years ago, or whatever the fuck it is. It's going to start getting muddy because as a species, we ruin everything. And we are going to ruin AI too. I guarantee you that. Technology nowadays is starting to go into a path where it's going to replace everyday jobs, which, yes, we would want a society where the menial tasks in life taken out of our plate would definitely be a relief. But it's much more than that. You're taking people's livelihoods. You're
kind of stripping creativity, if you think about it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. You're stripping creativity because now the actual artists are figuring like, well, if I do one work and now this OpenAI is going to mimic everything I do, what I mean? What's the point now? They're just going to do that, or that's going to slowly kind of, not saying it's going to replace the actual talent, but if the work it outputs is anywhere near close to that, then, I mean, it's almost like he's going to be challenging himself. Because like adding to what Mark just said, is like you probably could ask the OpenAI to write me, say, a Shakespearean play.
Okay.
And
Hold on. I just took you on that offer. Title, Harry Potter and the Enigma of Eternity. Chapter 1, A New Dawn. The sun ascended with a gentle embrace, its amber rays spilling over the quaint village of Otteridge. The day began its dance, casting whimsical shadows on thatched roofs and cobbled lanes. The trill of birdsong painted the air, a soothing melody that carried the promise of another chapter in the Wizarding World saga. Amidst the picturesque tableau, a small cottage sat nestled on the village's edge. Its windows glowed and the muted radiance of the dawn's earliest hour. Behind the ivy-framed glass, Harry Potter stretched his arms with a languid yawn, banishing the last vestiges of sleep. It had been nearly 2 decades since the resounding victory over the dark forces of Lord Voldemort,
Holy
and a
shit.
delicate peace had woven its threads through the tapestry of existence. In the coziness of his warm slippers, Harry ambled into the kitchen, drawn by the inviting aroma of freshly steeped tea. There, his heart quickened as he beheld Ginny. Is her name Ginny or Ginny?
Jenny.
Ginny, yeah. His companion, though through every tempest and triumph, orchestrating the morning's rituals. Auburn hair cascaded in a familiar cascade, framing hazel eyes that held the same warmth and mischief they always had.
Holy
shit.
Good morning, dear, Ginny greeted him, a gentle smile playing on her lips. Yeah, like...
That's as scary as it is cool.
That definitely sounds like a new Harry Potter book start.
Now, would you want to read that Harry Potter book?
Absolutely, I would want to read the Harry Potter book.
Exactly. And who knows if J.K. Rowling would make it.
That's the thing. It's as a consumer of the material, it not coming from her directly technically doesn't keep it in the same universe. It's a new writer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a spin on it. I mean, granted, you can start to get into alternate universes and so on and so forth, but like, this was scary. The fact that you read all of that, she does have auburn hair. She does have green eyes. Ginny is his love interest.
Oh, it goes on. It goes on.
I'm sure it does.
I want to.
That was just.
Yeah.
But like, that's the danger of it. You're not going to go to the source for it anymore. You're going to go to this. They can spit you out eternal books. They can spit out like, what does Harry Potter do when he has to take a shit? And they can go into great detail that he uses his wand to get out the toilet paper. And doesn't even have to touch it at all. It's just, you know what I'm saying? It's scary.
Well, you see, this is going to start even more problems down the line because, say, that book, the way I mean, believe it or not, I've never read any of the books, and believe it or not, I've never seen any of the movies. Not because I don't like it, I just never got around to it, and then it passed. But all that aside, there's going to be people that are going to, like, say that was actually released, what he was just reading, which sounded exactly like what you would think one of those books would sound like in my case. But people are going to start to like the AI version possibly better than the author that created it. So now you got a bigger issue.
Does it matter as long as what people
to her will matter
being read?
Yeah, but to the author, it's going to matter.
She's not going to miss anything. She's a billionaire.
That's true, but it's still her art. It's still her story, and it's still her baby.
How long?
You know what I mean?
Hold on. How long? So here's my problem with copyright. Right? Originally, it was for a very short period of time. It was like 14 years under the original Constitution. Now it's like, we can't. We just can't have works enter the public domain anymore. I think recently they've started to.
Well, it depends upon what we're talking about.
Delayed them indefinitely, but
I'm very good on that because honestly, that's Disney's fault.
I mean, it's not only Disney's fault, but everyone. A lot of creators are taking advantage of that shit. They just sit on those works and remake and recycle them into the ground, and sometimes they just don't take care with those creative works, and sometimes they just abandon them altogether. And wouldn't those creative works in other hands add fresh ideas to them? Copyright is a privilege that our government protects. It doesn't have to be the case that copyright exists. Like, that is a privilege that says that we are going to protect a right for you to exclusively reproduce and create this work. That doesn't exist in nature.
Did you see what happened to Winnie the Pooh?
I heard about this.
His copyright finally expired to the point that it became public domain. So you can do whatever you want with Winnie the Pooh now.
Okay, so that's why they had that
horror movie.
Yeah,
they had a horror movie.
Robin and.
Yeah, it was called Blood and Honey. I never saw it.
Yeah, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
It looks stupid as shit. I'm not gonna lie, but.
But you know what? It may be stupid as shit, but some people might have liked it.
But here's the thing:
we deserve to be able to see Winnie the Pooh in that light after like 100 fucking years of
But you still need
the
to
same
give the
thing.
writers the ability to make money off of stuff. If, for
Especially
instance,
when it's his product. I hear you.
It's been around for like mad long.
Well, so is Mickey Mouse.
Right, they already made enough money off of Mickey Mouse. Let someone else make money off of Mickey Mouse.
Well, you could say that about Mario and Luigi.
Let someone else make money off of them.
They're not going to do that because those are the rights to their characters, to their company.
Right, we're discussing whether those rights are, indeed valid, or those rights should continue for so long.
I think they should, or actually maybe not that they should, but I think it should be up to the originator.
Hold on. Why did we extend copyright for so long, going from like 14 years to life of the author plus 70 years, or like
that's what music's
90
like.
years, like
it's life plus 70 years.
Well, yeah, that's for individual authors, and then for corporate authors, it's like 90 years. Like,
well, it's also for plagiarism purposes too, because like that could, if you take it to a song,
for plagiarism purposes.
Because if you take it to a song perspective,
hold on. Plagiarism is an academic term. That is not a legal term.
Well, it still applies, because if I were to write a song,
you can't sue someone for plagiarism.
So in other words, you can copy any artist's song word for word and they can't sue. I guarantee you'll get sued.
That is violating their copyright.
Yeah, but it's plagiarizing their work. If you do the exact same lyrics and the exact same beat.
No. Plagiarism is an academic term they use in school. When it comes to copying someone's work, that violates their right of reproduction of copyright.
Okay, but that's
that work, that violates their right of distribution of a copyrighted work.
Okay, so
there is no right against plagiarism.
Okay, so you're saying Vanilla Ice was in the right?
Right?
Wait, what?
Dun.
Yeah, that's a good call. The Ice Ice Baby with the original. Holy shit, I can't think of the name. Under Pressure.
Under Pressure.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because that would be justifying Vanilla Ice's point, which he clearly did take that. So I feel like to a certain limit, they are there for a reason.
Well,
for certain purposes.
It depends. Like we grant copyright in order to, sort of incentivize creative works. Okay. But how much do we have to incentivize them? How long do we have to incentivize them? After, like, it started at 14 years, and now it got extended to 20. It got extended to 28, and then it got extended to like 50, and then now it's life of the author plus 70. Like, come on.
The reality, but the reality of the whole thing is the reason why I like it the way it is the reason why I'm going to say I do think it should stick around is because it also forces more creative minds to come up with something new and not take something somebody already made and just do it again. So by there being a Mickey Mouse, you can't make another one.
Society where things can amalgamate over time, you have huge corporations like Disney doing the same things over and over and over again, and you can't make other movies. You have like 1,000 Marvel movies, and you can't have creativity for other movies. You really can't.
DC's trying, but
no, I'm not talking about superhero movies. Like Oppenheimer is like the only and Barbie, I guess, are like the only non-superhero movies that have seen success recently.
That's got,
and it's because like the corporation, Disney, which owns Marvel and owns Lucas film,
Star Wars.
They just keep recycling the same properties over and over and over and over again, and they own them in perpetuity. It seems like, at least for the rest of our lifetimes. And it's just like, when is enough enough?
All right, I can see your point there, but at the same time, I still think it should come down to the creator should make that decision, and if they choose not to, then they don't.
But if the creator is a huge corporation that just recycles shit, then
everybody recycles shit.
Creativity. Someone with a unique idea can't get their movie made unless they're lucky.
It certainly sets the competition level high.
I guarantee someone would have a better idea for like a new Star Wars trilogy than the one that got put out.
Yeah, it's funny, they're already working on that. I heard too. Speaking of that.
Right, but wouldn't it be great if like someone else did it and not fucking Disney because they fucked it up?
See, there's more to it than that because I feel like Disney. Disney's the housing company. I wouldn't blame Disney as much as the director because if you look at the last 3 movies that they made, the first one, believe it or not, was directed by the same guy that did Lost. It was J.J. Abrams, believe it or not.
Right.
But then the second one came, and they did
actually a decent movie.
Yeah, and it was actually the first one of the bunch wasn't too bad. But now here's the catch: the second one was done by somebody entirely different. J.J. Abrams didn't do it. So there's your next person coming in, and he fucked it up. And then J.J. Abrams was, I think, rehired to do the last one. I could be mistaken on this. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he came back for the third one. But at that point, I feel like the damage was done. So like. And they just made it worse is what ended up happening.
Right, but the reason we're in this predicament is because Disney is the parent company and wanted to recoup its money that it had to pay out to buy the Star Wars franchise from George Lucas. They were like, you have to pump out, these movies.
X amount. Yeah. Okay.
And now they're going to pump out more, and now we're going to pump out games, whether they're good or they're not good. Like, let's just make our money back and keep cashing in. Let's make, 1,000 different shows so that, like, let's make 100 different TV shows. And it's good that they're, building on the universe or whatever, but it might benefit from some fresh ideas from people who are, say, fans of it, that know what other fans would want to see in a Star Wars movie.
That's true.
And restricting it to a mega corporation that's going to, I think they are stifled in terms of their creative decisions in order to market it to an audience. Yeah, I don't always think they have the best vision. And
no, they probably
after a while, it gets stale and they lose their touch on a franchise.
I mean, technically, though, the way it's run now in this capitalistic country and everything, technically, you're right, Disney does house the whole thing. But any other company, if they really wanted it that bad, if they threw a high enough number at it, that's how you get it, if you really want it that bad. It's kind of sad, but that's really how Disney got it. You know what I mean? So, like, if another company really wanted to make a movie with those characters,
right? But
they would have to pay.
Saying is that
that's what it comes down to.
In a capitalist society, when there's a concentration of corporate power in very few corporations, that it's hard to get outside voices, outside creative voices into that process. They either have to join the machine that is Disney, or they just don't get seen.
Let me pose this to you, Rook. Would you say it'd be feasible that a company shouldn't own more than a certain number of intellectual properties? Like, say you're a big company, you're making money hand over fist. If you want these properties, you have to let some of these properties go. You can only have X.
I don't know if I would put a particular number on it. That would be kind of arbitrary, I think. But I think that antitrust law should be taken more seriously in this country. And the theory of antitrust should be taken more seriously. We used to care about, companies having, outsized monopoly power and exercising it to amass more money in perpetuity.
I think on a base level of every human, every normal Joe that's out there in America now, I think we all would agree with that statement. The problem is those in charge who make the rules for those kind of things do not agree with that at all.
That's true.
They want more for themselves and less for everybody else.
You know it.
Well,
it's very true.
I don't know. Are you talking about lawmakers or?
At what point does money become ridiculous? When I say ridiculous, it means you could still X amount of money out of your pocket and it wouldn't even phase you.
No, well, it's not so much the money it's in and of itself. It's the exercise of that money to grow that money and to protect that money, to use money as a tool of power over other people. That's the problem.
Yeah, that is the problem. That's the everyday life for us. We're under that thumb.
That's true.
So those people who have that ridiculous money where they can, pay for lobbyists, they can pay for judges, re-election and any other political figure that wants to get reelected. They can just
pay Clarence Thomas or Clarence Thomas's grandson to go to school.
How do we as a society, and don't tell me vote, how do we as a society deal with that and like make that not that way and make it to where like there needs to be a restriction at some point where like, okay, you have your fair share. Now let the next person come up and get his fair share.
That's not going to happen. Not in this
Yeah.
capitalistic society. It's not going to happen. I hate to say it.
But it's because those who have that power push it to their side, and there's
And they
not
keep the
much
other ones down.
little guy can do. I mean, yeah, we can come together as a conglomerate, all in one together to combat that, and we possibly could win. The problem is there's no message across any spectrum that will unite us as one in this country ever.
It's
There will
got,
always be
yeah,
someone fighting that wedge. If people would just get their heads out of their asses and forget about race and religion
right?
and where you
Politics.
how much fucking money you had and which side of the fucking fence you're on, and just focus on what human beings need to survive and move on and thrive. Not just, get by day to day, just, thrive. Not everybody's looking to make $1 million and drive a Ferrari. So, some people just want a very modest house and a modest car and just
Just
live
a
a modest
comfortable
life.
lifestyle. Yeah, just a comfortable lifestyle is what we're talking. I hear you there too. But to pull this back full circle back to the open AI, I'm going to say something that might piss some people off. But like, I can see why that we're, because it led to here anyway. But I can see why like this AI thing is incredible to certain degrees, especially when it comes to what's going on with Sarah Silverman's case, let alone the artwork and everything else that it can do. However, I almost feel like at some point, if they obviously haven't done it yet, but they're gonna have to put some kind of restriction or limit on this thing at some point because it's gonna kill creativity. Period. Because no matter you could have any human won't compare to a machine when it analyzes their style specifically too.
All it will take, is one studio or one creator to take Chat GPT and whatever the image one is to make a movie with full fucking sound, full writing, everything, all based on that, and that to make a shit ton of money, and then that's it. That's going to be the standard, and then all the studios are going to start switching to using that, and everybody's out of
and then it's just going to get boring because it's just going to be just that, and it's not even like it's like a real mind behind it. It really isn't.
Hollywood just churns out sequel after sequel.
That's true too, but if you
they're
think
too afraid to make anything else.
Well, to make something new, but if you think about it, I've seen this whole, especially with the comics, like I've seen this whole thing kind of brewing up as the years went on, going back to even the 90s. Because, like, you had some cheesy DC movies or whatever, and like you had some stuff out that was, for say like 85 to say 2000. But then once like 2000 hit, that was like the golden era. And you really have like Lord of the Rings to thank for that, because that's where you first saw that technology really come out. And then suddenly, then you started seeing X-Men movies and Spider-Man movies. The reason why you didn't see this in the 90s is because the technology wasn't there. They couldn't do it. Or if they tried, people would laugh because it just looked ridiculous. You know what I mean? So like it hit, people liked it. So that's why you're seeing so much, continuity with the whole thing, because it's really drawing an audience. And for a lot of us, we grew up on that shit too. You know what I mean? So now we're seeing what we didn't see as kids now on the, like the big screen for a change when we couldn't then. But taking this to the AI, the open AI thing again, if this thing really does get to the point where it's starting to just take over, it's just like, it just seems very literally artificial as it is, but ironically, but you know what I mean? Like it's just not like, I don't look at it as like it's super creative after a while if it's the only source. You know what I mean? Right now it seems creative because it's new and you're not really seeing it that much, but yet it is still there. And you see where I'm going with this? But like eventually if this does have no limits and just can do whatever it wants and apparently it's okay, eventually it's going to take over, period, and you're not going to see anybody really putting stuff out. It's going to be AI, open AI / M. Night Shyamalan. Like, you know what I mean? And why can't I just watch M. Night Shyamalan? I don't want the fucking computer.
Right. The major flaw of it is the fact that it is going to be superior than any human being could ever be.
And that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, because a human is not going to beat this thing once it's got the information it needs. You know what I mean? It's going to be possibly even better than the original. Well, and then that's going to put that guy out of work.
I think one of the dangers is that we lose our ability to produce original quote unquote information. Now, all human knowledge like evolves from what came before. Everyone that contributes to creativity and to human knowledge builds off of the knowledge that came before it. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum. And so I think we risk losing people who can push that envelope further, because you're going to have a lot of data that, it's just going to be the same data. There's not going to be as much new data because people aren't going to, put it as much creative effort into things. So there's not going to be enough new data. So you're just going to have the regular data and data that's derived off that data involved in the creation of new things. And so, but we also need humans that can think outside of the constraints of that original data. And I think that's where the risk is. It's that those people are going to be at a premium, but I think they're going to become fewer and fewer.
Problem is, the reason why the major medias keep pumping out the same stuff is because that's what people apparently like.
Exactly.
I disagree that there's not enough original material out there. I think there's a shit ton. It's just nobody's looking at it because they keep shoving the same shit down our throats all the time.
That's also got some truth, or it doesn't see the light of the day because of it.
Well, yeah, they take advantage of
I can agree that like most intellectual properties can use a new look on things and get a new variation of things. But like, if you really think about it, would you want Mickey Mouse to change? Whole franchise, by the way. This is not just something in the US. Like Winnie the Pooh, maybe Europe, maybe America, maybe that's about it. Maybe a little here and there, but like Mickey Mouse is every fucking where. You can go halfway around the country and find a Disneyland, I guarantee. That country, a world, and find a Disneyland. But I agree that corporate grips on intellectual properties are bad, but just this one, would you want Mickey Mouse to change?
Well, see, here's the thing.
Yeah, why not? We've seen what Mickey Mouse was in the hands of Disney for 100 fucking years. Like, let someone else take Mickey Mouse in another direction, see what he can come up with.
But that's where you're playing the game of fire, because one, you're talking about a children's character here, and if they decide to turn this into some kind of drug lord or like, you know what I mean, then it kind of makes the whole situation really fucked up. You know what I mean? So like, I can see why.
I think it would be funny.
Some people. It could be funny. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, that's not their vision of that character, and they don't want that to be seen for kids because that's their kid's character. You know what I mean? Like they don't want some like rated R version or some X-rated version, or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
South Park has done parodies of Mickey Mouse, and it's not for kids. It's funny as shit to watch Mickey Mouse like curse and become violent.
Fair, but that's outside of what the realm itself is supposed to be, and that's where it should stay. It's like if you get somebody their hands on Mickey Mouse and does like, I don't know, a Tim Burton movie with it. Where are you gonna go with that?
Yeah, it might just be like a big waste of time and money.
You're already permitted to do parodies, and to the extent that you're allowed to do that, then if it's a bizarre enough turn in a different direction, then it could be classified as a parody and permissible under copyright law.
But then again, we're kind of being hypocritical here because that is also, like we were saying, that's not something new either. Remember how we were saying the new guys can't get in? Well, if we do that, guess what? You're taking something that's already out there once again and redoing it.
Right.
So what's to say that's different than what DC's doing
or Marvel? You're taking it in a different direction than what the original creators did.
I guess, but generally it's the same character, just not doing the same things. You know what I mean? So it's like, who cares?
I'm looking at it now, and there is an oversaturation level. There is a point where you'd be like, oh, great, another fucking Mickey Mouse show. I can see where change is good. I can see where retirement is also good. Like, just leave it the way it was and let it die. Just let it fold into the silver screen era, kind of back into the day. This was a character. It's now going on, and we're moving on to something else. I don't know. I think it just comes down to public opinion and public want. What do people want?
It's that, but it's also like you have to keep in
Right.
mind
Well,
with
people also voted for fucking Trump. I don't know
yeah.
that necessarily what people want is the greatest. Like,
yeah, for real, right?
Well,
that was a fuck up and a half.
I'm talking about just altering a beloved character versus someone who speaks out one ear and listens with the other. It's just you're talking about political. That's decisive in its own right.
But I
You're
mean,
not, at that point, you're not playing. Honesty is the best policy. You're playing that what I say and what I do are two different things, and don't tell me otherwise.
right, but you got to keep in mind too with some of these characters, they're kind of more than just characters to the companies too. They're more or less mascots. Because yeah, Mickey Mouse is a cartoon. He's probably got movies and stuff. But then if you go to Disneyland, you got people in costumes greeting little kids. So if it was like another company took it and he's blowing lines, that's kind of like screwing up the whole image
but
of that
you're
character.
thinking from the perspective that I'm a company, I own this property forever because that's what we do in this country now.
Yeah,
we own properties forever. Where if it was in 1787, right after the Constitution, you couldn't own your shit forever. It was 14 years and that's it.
Yeah, but that was 1787.
And I'm saying, why can't we go back to something like that?
I don't ever see that ever happening, unfortunately. But
you might not ever see that happening, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be an idea worth considering.
I mean, it would be interesting, I guess, but at the same time, you wouldn't it could destroy the characters too. You give the wrong group of people to the wrong group of producers, they could fuck it up beyond repair.
No, you let the market vote, and if people like it, then they'll buy it. If not, then they won't.
Yeah, but even with Nintendo, the way they run their Mario Brothers and stuff, and how it's they're only exclusive, and now they have theme parks, and they got a Nintendo Disneyland pretty much at this point.
Okay, but just because they've been allowed to monopolize the character for so long doesn't mean they have to have the right to do so in perpetuity.
I mean, it's their creation, though. So technically, I feel like they should.
Okay, but it's only because the Constitution allows them to, and it's been extended. The Copyright Act has been extended to basically grant them rights almost in perpetuity. That's the only reason.
But you also got to realize
it was lobbied for.
But you also got to realize, going back to then, that we did not have nowhere near as much technology to duplicate, replicate, and redo things now as they did then. So that's possibly also maybe a contributing factor to all this, because they only had so much power to really manipulate and duplicate things. You know what I mean? So nobody.
But I say that given the technology, we have the ability to produce things even faster than they did. Right? So cycles can go by even faster.
I just find
people didn't even live that long back then. So 14 years is long as fuck.
Okay. Let's say J.K. Rowling wants to write another book, but she uses Chat GPT. Where do you stand on something like that?
But she uses Chat GPT?
Yeah. Maybe edits it.
I don't have any problem with that. If it's a good book and I want to read it, I'll read it. I'll buy it. Actually, I won't buy it from her because she's transphobic. But I'll read it, if it's a good book.
But she didn't really write it.
I don't give a fuck who wrote it. If it's a good book and I enjoy it, I'll read it.
Interesting. I don't know. I look at that as kind of I almost feel like if we continue at the rate they're at, most of these artists, or authors rather, should just do that. As much as I say they probably shouldn't for creativity purposes.
They probably will.
Yeah, because
if they don't adapt, they're gonna get left in the dust.
I mean, that's true, but like I said, this is really putting a nice sword right through creativity, because that's gonna come up.
Not really. It's gonna facilitate more creativity.
Yeah, but it's not her ideas.
You don't have
to. It's a computer. It's not her ideas making it. All the other books were her ideas.
No, you can use the computer to help you generate more ideas.
Well, yeah, but it's not necessarily
and iterate on them faster. See what ideas are good and work, and see what ideas are bad a lot quicker than it would take to, create a whole fucking novel that just doesn't work.
All right, let me ask you this: who's your favorite musician or rapper or whatever musically? One, pick one.
My favorite music artist of all time, Chris Cornell. And actually, this is actually a good point. So, Chris Cornell, as people know, committed suicide a few years ago. And so we will never get to hear his voice, live again. I've seen him in concert so many times, and I'm just so disappointed that I'll never get to hear him live again. However, there are AI programs that have studied his voice and can clone his voice. Now, does it sound exactly like him?
Probably not.
Maybe not. But it sounds good, and it's only going to get better with time. And I've heard some things that just astounded me, because I've listened to probably every Chris Cornell song there ever was. And let me tell you, this AI has his voice down to a T. Including all the nuances of it. It's not perfect yet, but it's getting there. And I heard this AI thing where it had a combination of Chris Cornell and Kurt Cobain, right? Now, what if Chris Cornell and Kurt Cobain sang a song together, or their voices were blended somehow, so you get the best of both of them? Those type of creations aren't possible without AI. And if people can enjoy that music on the as a listener, then why can't we as humans be able to just sit and enjoy that type of creativity in music that wasn't possible without AI?
I'd be willing to bet if he didn't do what he did, he would not be down with that.
No, it's right. This is a different scenario. People that have passed, and I agree with him. I would love to hear stuff from people that are gone. As soon as he was talking Chris Cornell, I was thinking Kurt Cobain as well. And the fact that you said that gives me a lot more respect for you, Rook, and I have to say that. I mean, not that I didn't respect you in the first place, but I've never really person.
I've probably listened to every Kurt Cobain song at some point.
But what about if a living musician?
Yeah.
So let me get on Steve's side with this. All right, what if Eminem came out with a new rap or new album all based on GPT? Would you say that he really has that skill?
So they have voice cloning where they have the South Park characters doing the song Rap God, or and it's funny as shit. You gotta listen to it.
That sounds funny. But
it is funny as shit. All you have to do is clone the South Park character's voice, and then you could just layer it on top of Eminem's voice, and it will spit out South Park characters' voices instead of Eminem's. Those type of mashups are only possible with AI.
Yeah, and
I'm glad I got to fucking hear that.
Yeah, I can see it bringing joy, and I can see it being kind of funny, but all in all, in the end, I'm not really on board with it. I'm not gonna lie. I guess that is not as important. It's not a big a deal. But what you were saying with Kurt Cobain and mixing him with Chris Cornell. Yeah, there you go. I'm sure that would be cool, but it's the art form, regardless of whether you wanted to make a new album like that it may sound kind of dope. Don't get me wrong, but people need to realize it's artificial intelligence. It's not him. So regardless of how close you can get it,
if I enjoy the sound of it and it sounds like him, then who cares if it's artificial intelligence?
I mean, I just feel as a real fan, you should, because it's not really him.
Believe me, no one's a bigger fan of Chris Cornell than I am, and I'm
so
glad
you should
that I get to hear
version.
his voice. Yes, I do like the real version, but I'm also glad that I can hear his voice in other contexts that I wouldn't have been able to before.
Right, but if he's covering something else, then I can see. All right, well that'd be kind of cool. But if you're talking about trying to release new material,
where he covered most of the concert was covers. He covered a lot of other artists.
Yeah,
and I like that because I get to hear those songs in his voice, and now I can hear other songs in his voice because of the guy.
But I'm talking about new content. Because if you're going to listen to a new song generated entirely by AI, sure, it may sound like him, but it is not him.
But
So-
if it sounds okay, I know it's not him. I'm not like
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'd love
I'm
to
not
hear-
expecting the Chris Cornell. It's not like Tupac who releases new albums.
right?
all
I was
the
just
time.
gonna bring that up.
like Chris Cornell is dead. I know that. But if I can hear his voice and I enjoy it in a new context, then who is to say that I can enjoy that? I'm not going to be like, oh, I don't like how this sounds because AI made it. No, if I like how it sounds, I like how it sounds.
Yeah, I mean that's your personal preference, right? But like,
right, I like the sound of his voice, and if an AI can replicate that, then I love that.
yeah, I mean, it's like that's a bad example because he's no longer obviously with us. But like, if he was still alive, I'm pretty sure he'd be pretty pissed about that. Because right now, I'm noticing a lot of artists, a lot of from various genres too, not even just like rock or rap or whatnot, but like Ice Cube even went out and threatened, said, if you even try using my voice for anything, I will come after you and sue you. And to tell you the truth, I don't blame him because that's not him. You know what I mean? You're kind of stealing someone else's voice now. Like that's weird. I don't know. Slippery slope.
You're gonna get what I'm gonna call. You're gonna get a slew of what I call Milli Vanilli musicians, people who are on stage lip syncing to a song GPT created.
Right.
You're gonna get corporate America pumping these people out like crazy.
Right.
And it's all you have to do is get somebody on stage who looks good. Maybe
they won't even have
that. No, but I'm just saying though, it's just like that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna get corporate people who are making songs based on certain artists, whether it's hip hop, whether it's rock, whether it's country, whether it's jazz. And it's going to sound like people that you kind of know, maybe a little different, maybe a little better. And it's going to be a formula that they're just going to pump out. And it's going to be all GPT and whatever programs make these things. And you have people on stage faking like they're doing it.
Exactly.
The front man.
And the whole thing's just going to seem so fake. You know what I mean? In the end, it's just going to seem so ridiculous, really. Like,
eventually it'll work its way out and people will get caught for it. But you're going to get a big chunk of that and watch.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
So I've just reminded, like Freddie Mercury, you know, he told his manager before he died, you could do whatever you want with my music, just don't make me boring. Okay.
Yeah, so that was his.
That obviously wasn't directly in the context of AI, but he was, you know, it would seem that he would be supportive of, you know, having sort of like transformative ideas and using his music in new ways that, you know, you haven't seen before.
Right, but he gave his discretion there. He was open to the idea. Not every artist is open to that idea. So you got to respect that. You know what I mean? If they don't want to do it, then it's off the table. But if they're cool with it, then so be it. Have fun with it. You know what I mean? And do whatever you want.
Sure, I'm not saying that it should be done without permission or without, you know, the blessing of an artist. I'm not saying that, you know, music should just be, you know, taken without permission.
Because think of it as if you were an artist, if you were a rap star or something, like if people were listening to you and your music, I would want them to hear my tracks, not some computer generated track. You know what I mean? The work that I developed and spent mad time to do.
But if people enjoy something, they're going to enjoy it, regardless of whether it's produced by, you know, using synthetic means or artificial means. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as people enjoy it, that's really all that matters in the end.
I mean, that can be true, but I feel like it should only be done with discretion.
It's going to come down to the point of the listener's preference. I mean, agree to disagree on certain things, but it's going to be, there's going to be a radio station where you can type in what you want to hear and it'll pump it out, and it'll be amazing. It'll be like the new Spotify. It'll be the Mixify. You know, give me a song with Run DMC and Guar and Lionel Richie, and let me hear what that mix is like. You know, you're gonna get some crazy shit.
Right, it'll already know your preferences, so you could just have it automate a playlist and create music on the fly for you. What's so bad about that?
I think there's still
killing creativity is what it's doing.
Needs to be some form, not of regulation, just of a line drawn in the sand. Like if anyone's passed or that music from those people cannot be created in real time because band's not back together or whatever the situation is. If it can't be created by humans, then Chat GPT can have its way with it. If the person is still alive and still able to make these kind of things of that nature, I think it should be limited with permission, and you need to get an
I
alarm.
don't know. Some artists don't even own the rights to their own music.
That's true, and some of them even sell it too.
That's well, that comes down to corporate. That's legal issues, and that's out of their hands. As much as they want to whine and cry about it, unfortunately, it's out of their hands.
And a lot of artists live off of their past creativity and glory and haven't made anything in fucking decades.
Well, actually, on a maybe future episode, we could talk about how the way streaming services are being run.
I like where you're going with that.
Actors now making pennies on the residuals versus what they used to make on like HBO and Cinemax when TV was a bigger thing.
Or even just the box office in general, because
No,
that also plays a role. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying like we could talk about that in the next episode because that's kind of the same kind of thing. Where now actors are starting to lose out on residuals because the streaming services pays pennies on the dollar what they should be getting, but it's just how I guess the system is being worked.
That's our show for this week, everyone. Strange Planet will have new episodes on YouTube every Friday. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.